Oh my God, Eddie Hearn. What a guy. There's very few people. No, I'm going to change that. I've never met someone as neurotically obsessed with success and with winning and with accomplishing things and with living a life in constant forward motion as my next guest, Eddie Hearn. And it's remarkable because when you unpack the reasons for that obsession and that dedication to being more and achieving more, there's quite a fragile, vulnerable, insecure story. That's something I've noticed with a lot of my guests. And it often makes me think that the most successful amongst us aren't necessarily choosing to be. Something's happened to them that's left them with no choice. Eddie Hearn is one of the most notorious sports promoters in the world. He's the king of boxing in this country. He is known for his No Context Hand Twitter page, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen. But what I wanted to do when I sat down with Eddie Hearn was to get underneath the external sort of braggadocious, loud promoter side of him, and to find out, even in the case of someone like Eddie, who is loud, who is successful, who is ambitious, who is a promoter, are the same things true for him that are true for you? The insecurities, the vulnerabilities, the mental health issues. And how much does he really understand himself? My conversation with Eddie was incredibly enlightening, but it also wasn't that surprising. So without further ado, I'm Stephen Bartlett, and this is the Diary of a CEO. I hope nobody is listening, but if you are, then please keep this to yourself. You've done a ton of interviews, especially over the last couple of weeks, and there's this really consistent theme that I felt in all of the interviews I watched. I watched you at Cambridge, the High Performance podcast, loads of them. And then before we started filming today, I had a chat with Frank, and he fully grasped on you. Now, what he said to me, which was also consistent with these interviews, is that you are relentless. And he was telling me he's had some, I probably shouldn't say this, but he was telling me I've started having this, is it night owl or?
Night nurse.
Night nurse. Because Eddie will text me in the middle of the night. And he went, I'll tell you one thing about Eddie. He is relentless. You're what, 40?
41.
41 years old. What's made you that relentless at 41 years old to the point where you're pestering your colleagues at 3 a.m. in the morning?
I don't know really. I think when I did the book, it was quite a good sort of counselling session with myself, because I wasn't really great at school. I wasn't particularly a hard worker at school. I loved the pound note always, and when I wrote the book, I started writing about my childhood and what it was like growing up and how I was moulded. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that I love to win. And
Why did you love to win?
I don't know, because with my dad, that's what we did. So when we played cricket, when we played football, when we played table tennis, when we sparred with each other, it was like, for me growing up, I would come back from a match, say I played cricket, and he would go to me, and actually my mum was the same, and he would say to me, how many runs did you get today, son? And I would say, oh, no, 4. Oh, useless. Come on. Next time, knock in a 50. Right? It was never, oh, well done, son. You took part. That's what really matters. That they taught me taking part is completely and utterly irrelevant. You win. And ultimately, sport is how I was brought up. I was brought up on the foundations of sport, the lessons of sport, the winning, the losing, the highs, the lows, but always taught that winning was everything. So, and I'm a failed athlete. I think any kid growing up would love to be a sportsman, wouldn't they? I played cricket at a very good level, but I was never good enough at anything. So this is the next best thing. But I think if you're not trying to win in life, and winning, it means something different to everybody. Success means something different to everybody. Some people view success as being able to get their pay packet on a weekend, be able to, spend time with their family and have enough food on the, make enough money to have food on the table and make sure everything's okay at home and be happy. and have a happy life with no stress or no drama. That's success to a lot of people. But people's interpretation of success is very different. And, for me, I still don't know why I do. I know why I do this, but like you say, I love it. I guess that's what it comes down to, a passion for what you do. And I don't know what the passion is. Is it the passion that I love the sport of boxing? Is it the passion that I want to succeed against, and be bigger than my dad? I think that's a big part of it as well. Or is it just that I love to win? Or is it that I'm a bit sick in the head? Maybe all of them.
The sick in the head point. I want to play with that idea a little bit. I wrote in my book, actually, we have the same publisher. I wrote in my book that the thing that invalidates you when you're younger becomes the thing you seek validation from when you're older. And what I meant by that is, like, in my childhood, because we didn't have money, and I was this black kid in a school of 1,500 white kids, everything that we didn't have became the things that I chased when I was older, or the thing that made me feel somewhat invalid sometimes when I was a kid. Like you're saying about your dad saying, oh, you lost today, became the thing that I would seek validation from as an adult. And I wondered if that resonated with you at all. I mean, like...
Well, I had a different background. I mean, my dad was poor, became rich, and I was born. So I've said before, it's not like when you talk about generational wealth, we didn't have generational wealth. I had a dad who was from Dagenham, was from a council estate. His dad was a bus driver. And then I grew up in this sort of nouveau world where this bloke had made his money, and he was, I'll take the mickey out of him. I suppose he was a bit of a chav. He was like from Dagenham, and all of a sudden he'd got Ferraris and big cars, and we used to have a white limo and a black limo that would drive like the snooker players around and the fighters around, and I was horrible. I was obnoxious. Imagine like a 14, 15-year-old kid hanging around with Eubank and Naz, and then you're in a limo with your mates going up to London or to Romford for a night out. I mean, I look back and just cringe. But mine was different, and I guess when it comes down to it, and, again, from the book and speaking to people like Frank Lampard, he went to my school. He was in the year above me. At my school, I was Barry Hearn's son, and Frank Lampard was Frank Lampard's son. His dad played for West Ham. And it's a different kind of drive if you can make it flow in the right way. When you're talking about sort of mindset and hustle, where all of a sudden, I think so many people with successful parents end up just doing okay, but how do you go beyond that? How do you outperform everything that he done? And I will, and I feel like I've done that in many ways, but I will never be able to outperform the fact that he came from nothing.
My friend is in a very similar position. If I said my friend's name, you'd know the guy.
Right, okay.
His dad is a multi-billionaire. I know you know him because I've seen you with him
right.
before, actually, in New York. But his dad is a multi-billionaire, and he grew up with living in the shadow. And his dad was the same. And I had a conversation with him, and he said, I was always trying to be better than my dad. He is now a billionaire himself of his own doing. But it's fascinating that, and his dad sounds very similar to what your dad sounds, where his dad was tough on him. I think
they're tough on you because they don't want you to be that spoiled kid. I mean, you always want to spoil your kids. You want to give them the great. Even now, I've got 2 daughters. I love to spoil them. I work hard so I can give them a great life. But I just want them to understand manners, respect, and discipline. These are the 3 most important things. And he would make sure that I would understand that, even by having me working, giving me a clout every now and again, trying to keep, because it must have been frustrating for him, because I was probably all the things that he resented when he was growing up. The rich kid, with parents who had got big house and cars, and I would have hated me at school, but he would have looked at me, and that's why he was so disciplined with me. And I was in his slipstream growing up, so I would sit. We're here now. That was my house over there. So he would get home from work if he was in the country. He would always go out and give me a game of football or cricket, and then he would go in the office all night on the phone. And I would have dinner, and I would just sit in the office. I might have a ball, just throwing it up in the air, but I would subconsciously listen to the arguments and him losing his temper and just listen, not because I wanted to learn, just because I was there.
And you're talking there about the sacrifice of his success, which is, one of them, as you've highlighted, is less time with your family. You are relentless. Everybody says that. What is the cost of being a relentless person?
You have to be incredibly selfish. You have to, for me, family is the most important thing, but I have to be brutally honest and say, I don't let even family get in the way of things that I have to do, and that can make you an arsehole and it can make you sound terrible, but I just don't know any way around it. There is no way you can be the perfect husband or the perfect father and run a successful business, or, be a relentless operator. It's impossible, because I try to balance both. But when you're flying back from America from a show and you land at 7:00 in the morning, and then you go to Manchester for a press conference, and then you come home and you just make it to pick them up from school, and then you get back and they say, Dad, let's go over the park, and you're just absolutely on empty, and your phone's going and you're trying to do another deal, and you're pushing the swing and you're going like this, trying to send a message at the same time. It's impossible. Listen, I know, because sometimes my eldest daughter is old enough to say, Dad, please get off the phone, and that kills me, because that's bad to hear. I'm like, okay, but then 30 seconds later I'm back just having a look down, because it's a lifestyle. And it's impossible to be great at anything without making sacrifices. It doesn't matter if you're a fighter, if you're a sportsman. You speak to all successful people, you can't be everything. It's impossible, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to disregard your obligations, your family obligations, because they are extremely important. But you also need a wife or a partner who's understanding enough to say, this is what I know what he's like. He won't stop. And that's why when Frank talks about 3 a.m, 4 a.m, that's because a lot of the time I'm sort of making up for the hour or two that I've lost out playing with the kids. So I'll put them to sleep. They'll go to sleep at 9, 9:30, chill out with the wife for an hour. She'll go to sleep, and then I'm up. And now with the growth in America, it means that at 4 p.m, 5 p.m, the West Coast wakes up. So I can't go to bed. I can't disappear when it gets to 11 a.m, or on the West Coast, or midday on the West Coast, because they want to speak to me and we want to do business.
I am much earlier in my career, maybe, 15 years earlier in my career. And I've struggled with romantic love for the very same reason that for the last decade, I've slept in the office multiple weekends. I've been obsessed. I would basically sacrifice everything. And there became this moment in my life where I think it was maybe the day that someone tried to buy the company, and I thought about what I'd spend it on. And I remember going home, and I swear on my mother's life, I went on Rightmove and Auto Trader at the same. I had 2 tabs open, and I'm like, the Lamborghini.
I thought you were going to say Tinder.
No. That always follows the Lamborghini. So I was looking at this Lamborghini in this mansion in the countryside, and then I thought, if I buy these things, I'm trading this purpose I have, this job, this, for this Lamborghini and this mansion. And it felt really, really empty. And then I thought, but Steve, when you were 18 and you were broke and you had no money, 18-year-old Steve wrote in your diary, this is why it's called the Diary of a CEO, that you wanted the sports car, the million before you were 25. This was what we did it for. And then it threw my head into this confusion. It's if it's not that, if that's going to make me feel empty, they call it gold medal depression, where Michael Phelps won all the medals and then got depressed. Then what's it all for? And then I thought, and then also, when does it all end? When does it end?
Well, it doesn't end, because, and actually you're always searching. This is a problem and something you have to be careful of, because when you are trying to succeed and when you're trying to become great, actually the great people, they never feel content with achievement. And I'm very much like that. Frank Lampard, again, going back to him, he said that when he won the Champions League, he's always dreamed of winning the Champions League, and he stood there with a trophy and he felt nothing. I mean, he felt happy, but definitely not content, definitely not, I've cracked it. That might go back to the sickness, that we talked about earlier. And when we talk about sickness, I mean, probably not medically sick, but sick in the head a little bit, to a point where I get it all the time. We say that, we wanted to do, when AJ turned pro, we wanted him to be the world heavyweight champion. He won that. Great. We was in the ring after, jumping up and down. As soon as we got out of the ring, and then it's like, okay, we want to do something out. We got the Klitschko fight. Okay, you go through it, 90,000 at Wembley. You stand there. Everyone that was at the event tells you it's the greatest sporting occasion they've ever been to.
How do you feel?
At the time, amazing. In the ring, amazing.
Day after.
And then not even the day after. It's I never go out really, and I never drink really after a show. because that's probably, depressed is the wrong word, but I go back, I finish the media obligations 2-3 o'clock in the morning, go back to the hotel, and that is when I'll sit there, get into bed, and then obviously you can't sleep because the buzz and the adrenaline. And that's when you just feel a little bit low and empty, is that, okay, it's over. Same with what you talk about with Phelps. It's the highs versus the lows. You can't just experience the highs and then be happy with the lows. So you want more and more and more and more. And I'm my own biggest critic, and I'm also very pessimistic, which is strange to a lot of people. But I kind of use it to play tricks on myself, to keep myself driven. So when I do something or when I plan something, I always say to myself, there's going to be problems. I think it's going to go wrong. I doubt this will happen. I don't know why I do it, but it just helps me to battle away, to overcome everything, to get to the place. And then when I achieve something, which others might think is great, I say to myself, that's nothing. You got a long way to go, because I'm scared of sitting back, with the cigar on the beach and going, I've cracked it. You can't touch me. And we got to a position with UK boxing where, we are virtually untouchable. But I just don't want to be that guy who takes the foot off the gas. I want to bang every single nail in the coffin, and then move on to another market and another market and another market. But you do get the worry with that mindset is you may look back when you're 80 or 90 and go, wow, look at everything you've done. You never really enjoyed it, did you? I mean, I love what I do, but you probably should savour it a little bit more than you do. But again, it goes back to that mindset of being so driven. You want the next drug. Success is a drug, but you've got to be careful that it doesn't turn you into an arsehole at the same time. Because how many successful people do you know? Absolute arseholes.
Yeah.
Arseholes. Horrible, rude, no manners, obnoxious.
What's it done? Do you ever find moments where you think, fuck, I was just an arsehole then?
I think that it's just time for people. You end up being, it's not that you can turn into that if you're not one, but when you become busy, it's a bit like, when people say that, oh, he's changed. Of course he's changed. His life's changed. His responsibilities changed. His business has changed. You can't expect him to say the same people. And, when you have a group of friends, when you all come out of school and sort of you're going from there and you're talking every day, and the ones that sort of grow, the friendships are still as strong, but you just don't talk to each other every week, every day, because you got your own lives, you got your own vision, you got your own plans. But you still go for lunch and you get on better than ever. And it's the ones that say, oh, he don't talk to us anymore. I ain't got time, mate. But this goes back to the sacrifices. If I fall out with friends because of what I'm trying to achieve in my own personal life and my business, so be it. I know, again, that sounds, and it's not about being a bad friend or a bad person, but you can't worry about other people as long as you're a good person, as long as you do the right thing. The fact that you don't have time at the moment, but that's when people might perceive you to be an arsehole.
You talked a little bit about being 80 years old and looking back on your life. I'm going to just play a little game with you. So we've got to imagine that. What day of the week was? I think it's Tuesday today. Tuesday. So Friday, you find out that Friday's your last day on Earth. My question is, and really put yourself there, right? So Friday's your last day on Earth. All the fights coming up, AJ Fury, it all falls away. What do you immediately regret?
That's actually something that I've thought about quite a lot. And the reason is about 4 months ago, my granddad passed away. He was 93. Great life, And when I went to see him in his last couple of days, and he obviously didn't look great. And I looked at him, I thought, wow, life's crazy, isn't it? I said, everything that you've done in your life, and now you're laying here, about to leave. So when you get experiences like that, you have to be reminded sometimes that this is a game. Life is a game. We're only on borrowed time, right? And you can never take yourself too seriously. I think that's one thing I do well, is I love to have a laugh and I don't take myself too seriously. In answer to your question, since that moment, I've been thinking a lot about if I went now, do you look back and say, I couldn't have done any more? I had a great time. And I think the answer is yes. I mean, we can all do better. But my dad is an inspiration in that respect, because he's the kind of person that couldn't have squeezed one more drop out of his life. right? So I'm quite envious of that. He's 73, and who knows how long he's going to last. But I do feel like it's very important that when you get to whatever stage when God says that's enough for you, that you are able to look back and say, I couldn't have done any more. And that scares me a little bit, because
I want to know exactly what, when you think about more, you're saying I could have done more. You find out that this Friday is your last day. What are the things where you think, do you know what? Because I think that that moment, like the deathbed moment, puts everything in perspective.
It does, but I think in that moment, your emotions are very different to when you're well and fit and on the hustle and just, so you don't get a chance to reflect on that kind of moment until you're there.
Yeah.
And the obvious reflection at that point is, I wish I would have spent more time with my family. I wish I would have been less focused probably on work. But I'm not a believer in, the thoughts then are not the thoughts now, and you have to act on the moment. You can't live your life saying, well, blimey, when I'm on my deathbed, you might look back and, because I don't think you can plan like that. You have to do what's in your heart. You have to do what feels right. And what feels right for me right now is this.
Sure.
What might feel right then is, do you know what? Should have probably missed a few trips really and just done the school run a little bit more. And I know that, you really have to understand where you are in life. This is great for your mental health as well and your sanity. You got to be honest with yourself and you got to understand the situation. I know exactly where I'm at, what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, the sacrifice I'm making, what I could do better at, but I'm okay with it. You can't get the perfect balance, but as long as you understand what is going on and you're not deluded, you're not stubborn. Don't worry about it. I'm not about, I know I need to do more at home. I know I need to do more school runs. I know I need to be less short with the wife sometimes.
But there's a couple of points here that I think are super interesting. So, that deathbed moment, what I think it's doing, and I've never been there, you've not been there, but thankfully. What I think it's doing is it's telling you what actually mattered, because to some degree, I think that it's like with that hindsight, you can say, fuck, that person criticizing my hair or my cut or this, none of that fucking ever mattered. All of that was trivial. All the things that mattered were, as you say, like my niece or my, so I think that's what that moment's doing.
But that comes over time. How old are you now?
27.
Okay, you're a baby, right? When I was 27, what people thought of me really mattered. Listen, I've been working out for 35 years just to stay fat. Like the Barnett's going a little bit. I could not give a monkey's now. At your age, oh mate, I was, I might have been Jack the Lad, I might have been turning up, but deep down, it'd only take one of the boys to say, tell you what, Ed, you putting on a bit of timber there? Or look, your Barnett's creeping back. What? What do you mean? What do you mean? Now I go, yeah, mate, I know. Listen, sign of the times, isn't it? So being comfortable with yourself is the best feeling in life. It's the best feeling in life. And I think when I was growing up at school, I wasn't subconsciously. I think I had a massive chip on my shoulder, and that's why I was a bit of a knob, to be quite honest. But when you get comfortable with yourself, it's a beautiful thing in life. It really is. When you wake up in the morning, and you've always got to try, for me, and look good and feel good and be the best version of yourself you can be. But you do get to a stage, and that's actually when you become really powerful and effective. It's the same kind of thing. When you're young and you're courting or you're looking for a young lady to show you some interest, when you try really hard and you're sort of on edge and you're a bit, don't really like my hair, or, oh God, the ones that walk into the bar and just go, oh mate, I know I'm not the best, but they're the ones that everybody gravitates to. Anyone with a smile on their face is always creates so much more energy and flow than the people that don't. And that's about being comfortable in yourself. So I think that it's very difficult with everything you've achieved at your age to just know where you're going or what you're doing. I'm done. Do you know what I mean? I'm married. I've got 2 kids. I've got business. I'm struggling to balance everything, but I'm here. I'm not going to roll back the years and do this and do that. And I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly where I'm at. I know exactly what I'm focusing on. And that life starts to become a lot easier then. At your age, I went to work. I left college after my A-levels. I went to work for 5 years in sports management companies and event management companies. I was a sports agent on the PGA Tour in America. I had no idea where I was going. I mean, I just wanted to be successful. I wanted to earn money, but the mindset of or the change in mindset over the years is unbelievable. I always say to people, what matters to you now, you will look back on when you get to my age and go, I can't believe I even used to worry about stuff like that. And that's important, because I feel like people that are very successful, you did it at a very young age, very impressive, because I think it takes time. When I did the Cambridge talk the other day, you're sitting down with all these young. I'm street smart and I can sell, right? These people are like
boffins.
But I'm jealous of boffins. I used to take the mickey out of boffins. I'm jealous of boffins now. I find intellectual people fascinating. I love talking to them and just trying to learn and absorb. And I'm sitting in this room of people and they're listening to me, and I'm thinking, firstly, you must be listening to me thinking, this bloke, who is he? What is he, a used car dealer or something like that? And then, but I'm talking around, I'm saying to you, what do you want to do? Well, what is success to you? They've not got a clue. And it's not because they're at Oxford and they're deluded. It's because it's very difficult at that age to understand. I don't believe anyone at 40 looks back at what they were thinking at 20 and said, I had this plan, I'm there now, and this is what I always wanted to do. So it takes time to develop a passion for something. And that's a key word, passion, because when we talk about being relentless and we talk about this work ethic, you can only have it if you love what you do and if you have a passion for what you do. I don't think you can trick yourself. You can, but you can't be as good,
You said earlier that you feel like you're self-aware of like the lack of balance in your life because you've got this real relentless streak, you've got this family, and you're self-aware of it. Do you think, as much as you're aware of it, do you think deep inside you really have a choice? Or do you think you're being somewhat dragged by your own ambition? Because this is what I find fascinating about people, successful people, is it tends to be the case that, like me, I'm aware I need to see my niece more. But I just sometimes don't feel like I'm fully in control.
I do it because it's what I want to do, ultimately. I mean, I do have an obligation. I do have responsibilities. I'm talking about in the workplace.
Sure.
We've got a fantastic team here, but ultimately, when we're announcing a show, when we're doing a press conference, they want me. Sure. They want their flesh. So they roll me out, and I'm like a travelling salesman. Right, Eddie, we're announcing this show today. Off you go. Right, here we go. Back in the car. Here we go. So, but I do it because I enjoy it, because I love it, because I have an obligation to do it for the business that my father created. And my responsibility now is to take that to the next level. He built this from the foundations, from nothing. I'm not going to let it just fizzle out as he goes into his 80s. I want to take it to the next level. But the difference is I don't have to do this. I'm not looking at this saying, it's my way out. If I just make some money, I can buy the Lamborghini. Or I could have done that at 21.
But imagine the Eddie that doesn't do this. Imagine how he feels.
But the same thing. That was me at school. That was the kid telling the teachers, I don't have to do that. That runs shivers down me.
Give me some advice on because you're married, and I genuinely
dating advice?
Genuinely. No, it sounds crazy, but I'm like, you've managed to crack, it seems like, because you're married, crack the balance of being relentless on one end, but then managing to find a person or to at least keep them happy to some degree. I've not spoken to, I've not spoken to, but I started to think of the last couple of years. I'm like, how am I going to find someone that understands that I want to send text messages at 4 a.m. in the morning and that I sometimes don't want to talk to them, and that when I'm sat next to them, I'll be quiet for 7 hours because I've just got an email that I'm thinking about. And so I'm like, is it you have to find the right person? Is it something you say to them?
I think they need to know you. They need to know what drives you. I mean, if you had a conversation with my wife and you said, what is he like? She'd just go, well, he's just in his own world, isn't he? I mean, the amount of times, that moment where you get home and they go, right, I need to talk to you. And you go into the kitchen and they go, right, now, Isabella, I spoke to her teacher today and I'm gone, right? So I'm going and I'm thinking that contract's got to be in at 9 p.m, blah, blah, blah. And she goes to me, what did I say? And I go, the school, what? Isabella? And but it's not like, and she'll go, listen, we have blazing rows. you're so selfish. All you care about is work, But again, it just gets to a point where you just have to understand life. Nothing's perfect. You've got two people that love each other. I've known her since, my 20s. I've changed. We've both changed a lot over the years, but we've changed together and we've grown together. And this is what I do, and I would have had that conversation with her at some point many years ago, to the point saying, look, nothing's going to get in my way. I don't mean to sound horrible, and I love you, and, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, but you have to understand me. You have to understand that this is extremely important to me. Don't say this is the most important thing to me, because that'll get you bang in trouble. But this is extremely important to me. And I think because she's been around my family, because she knows how important it is to us, she kind of just gets it, and there'll be times where she'll say, did I hear you on the phone last night at 5 o'clock in the morning? I say, yeah, we was doing the Canelo deal, or, AJ deal, and she'll just look at me and go, but over time, I think the most difficult thing is the early stages of dating, because it's very difficult for a woman. They want your attention. People sometimes think that women want, money and, the nice house. And of course, everybody does. But they don't really. They want your attention, and they want your company, and they want your time. And there are three things that are very difficult to do when you live that kind of lifestyle. So you do have to, I'll race back from somewhere and I'll say, right, tonight let's go out for dinner. And I'll be knackered. I don't, hopefully she don't listen to this. I really don't want to go for dinner tonight. But you have to do it. And that's what my dad has kind of always taught me. Son, you got to respond. We're big family people. My mum is from the East End. She's old school. As far as they're concerned, the man goes out and puts the bread on the table, and the wife looks after the man. Old world. Yeah. That don't exist anymore. Yeah. But every morning or every night, my mum will iron my dad a shirt, and she will put it on the door for him in the morning.
If your wife, right, say we put her in this room, we sat her down with God, and we said, listen, you can decide what happens next with Eddie and his career. Right, so we can bring it to an end, and he'll spend more time with you. Or what do you reckon she would do if she could make the decision on your relentlessness and your career? How do you honestly think she would make that decision?
I think she, because she knows how important it is to me, I think she would say, no, he needs to do it. He has to do it. But I think the hope is that there is an end place or an end goal.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah, but for me, I don't. Whether in 20 years' time we play this back, I don't think I want to be 70, maybe even 60, 70, 80, doing this, dealing with problems. And listen, maybe I won't even make it that long. But for me, I definitely have the mindset of, not I want to get in and get out, but I do want to get that moment where I do sit on the beach with a cigar. Don't even smoke cigars, but, and a whiskey. Don't even like whiskey, but, I can imagine the picture at least, and go, do you know what? We done it. We done well. But walking away is the thing that at the moment would kill me, to be able, imagine when you wrap up shop and, this might be, for us, we've gone from being a family business, to having 4 employees, to now all of a sudden having hundreds of employees in multiple offices around the world. We're being approached for investment, for takeover, for IPOs. And now we're sort of at that stage of growth where, I don't know, I see a faster exit strategy than my dad. At least that's what I'm selling to her. Just give me a few more years. Just give me a few more years. But I do want to go and enjoy it, because I can't say I'm not enjoying myself, because I love what I do, but I do want that moment to just, but it's the walking away. How do you just one day turn around and, you might sell the business, or, you might float and you take a more of a backseat role. That's difficult because we make our own decisions. We're a hands-on business. That's what we love. We've turned down investment and opportunities for years because I don't want to bore the directors. We make the decisions, and we do what we want to do because we love what we do. But when you see such growth, and you see such interest, and you see the opportunity for, a much vaster wealth, being quite honest, do you want it? And if you want it, what's the exit strategy? Because at the moment, the exit strategy for our family is from the day you start working, from the day you die, you work your nuts off every single day. I mean, it's not particularly advanced, is it? That strategy, but that's just what we've always done.
Mental health, big topic, especially over the last 10 years. I think if you go back, 10 years ago and you said the word mental health, people think people are crazy, right? They think like, run away from that person. But now it's become like the opposite. It's like, someone's got, it's become something of where you give someone affection and you take care of them because the stigma's somewhat changed. We know the stats around male mental health. Have you ever suffered from any sort of mental health predicaments? This is my favourite day of the week. My all-time favourite flavour of Huel, berry. I went up to Huel's office in Tring last week and had another tour around their headquarters, and so pretty amazing. They have this massive gym, as you would expect. But the thing that I didn't realise about Huel was that it's also a vegan product. And also, I didn't realize their commitments to sustainability. Now, there's tons of reasons why you might choose to become a Hueligan like me. I've been drinking Huel for about 3 years, long before they decided to help me with the podcast and to sponsor us. But I never realized that element of it. The reason I've always consumed Huel is because of convenience, right? Some people might consume it because it's nutritionally complete. Which I guess is part of the reason I did as well. And then some people might consume it because it's affordable. But for me, because I'm not a vegan, I never realized that it was vegan. I never realized their efforts around sustainability. And I never realized it was also gluten-free because, again, that's not a problem I have. And so on this week's episode of the podcast, that's the key message that I wanted to get across, is that if you are vegan, and a lot of people don't know this, a lot of my friends didn't know this, Huel is vegan too. And this is my all-time favorite flavor, which is berry. For me, it tastes great. 20 grams of protein. I'm currently trying to get in better shape, I hope some of you have been able to notice if you've seen the podcast on YouTube, if you're listening on YouTube right now. And I love it. And this is why it's so awesome to work with a brand that you believe in, because their impact on the environment is low. They are good for you nutritionally. It's super convenient. And if you have the berry one, it tastes unbelievable. So what a win for me it was working with Huel, because I get to tell you guys about something that I would swear by, and I don't have to be dishonest with you. If you look at my fridge right now, maybe you should take a look in it. It's pretty much all Huel. I'm not advocating to have a Huel only diet, but that kind of speaks to the nature of my life and how busy I am, and how many meals I was missing before I became a Hueligan. Have you ever suffered from any sort of mental health predicaments?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I think, again, depression's one of those things, a bit like yoga and breathing and stuff we were talking about earlier. If you would have said to me 10 years ago, listen, maybe even 5 or 6 years ago, so-and-so suffering from depression, if your perception of that person is, well, he's young, he's good looking, he's healthy, he's rich, he's successful, how can he be struggling from depression? What a load of rubbish. And actually it takes the older generation even longer. I mean, I think my dad's only just accepted now that it exists with people, because his mentality is, what? Dust yourself down, what's the matter with you? And that's wrong, because it is real, and it does exist. I don't, have I had days where I've been feeling incredibly down? Yeah, but surely that's normal. I don't see myself suffering from that. And I think mental health problems and depression, I think it comes from overthinking. My brother-in-law is hilarious. I've never known anyone who just overthinks and worries about stuff. You'll be having a conversation, you'll go, I've just been thinking about that, and if that happens, I was thinking, next year you could be there, and then from there, it's like, whoa, what are you doing? Just when you're struggling mentally, focus on the short term, focus on day by day. I think sometimes people look at, and this is the same for business, when you have a project or a long-term plan, there are so many short-term obstacles and goals to overcome to get there. That's why how many times you spoke to someone, got this idea, you know, I'm going to be doing this and that and blah, blah. And then a month later, you've not even heard about it. Oh, well, what happened was we launched and then, you know, the council came in or the regulation board came in and this other company tried to do this and it just, it's like, no, because you didn't focus on the short-term goals. All you were worried about was the house and the Lamborghini and you weren't prepared to tick the boxes to get there. So sometimes when I'm a little bit off or, you know, might be traveling a lot and the equilibrium's gone and it's like, okay, so I'm just going to write down what I'm going to do today. And it can be really menial stuff. Could be walk the dog, you know, could be finalise a contract, could be go to the gym, could be go and get some food, you know, from M&S
just to
or
focus yourself a little bit.
Just to say, and I would tick everyone off.
Really?
Yeah, and I would say at the end of the day, I would look at it and I would go, done. And that's the momentum back. That's where you get the feeling of accomplishment, even on tiny things, to say, okay, I'm moving in the right direction. For me, that is a big help for me, is short-term focus. Because once you start worrying about what's going to happen next week or next month or next year.
You can't control.
No, and you're going to start driving yourself crazy. You've just got to say, okay, this is what I need to do today. And tomorrow, I need to do the same thing. And then before you know it, you'll start making positive changes. You'll start achieving because you know what you've set, the targets you've set yourself, you are achieving.
You're a bit of a philosopher. I don't know if you realise, because there's a great famous philosopher that says depression is too much of the past and anxiety is thinking too much about the future. And he says the cure is more now. And that's pretty much what you've described.
Yeah, that is true, because you can't worry about things that may or may not happen, and you can't change things that have already happened. What you can do is change what is happening today. And it's simple to do that. Again, in the book, I ran one marathon, right? Because my dad ran loads and he took the mickey out of me. I had to do it. And it's the same kind of thing. You start the marathon, you think 26 miles. If you start thinking about running 26 miles, I mean, it did give me anxiety attacks to start with. I was thinking, that's just ridiculous. I've never done more than 10K. And then you train and you train and you train and you build. And then every mile marker is an obstacle. You start off, you think 26 miles, blimey, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're okay. And then you're 12, 13, you think, I've done half. Then you get to 18, 19, you think, I can't do it anymore. And you think, just get to 20, get to 20, 21. And when you see that 20 mile marker, you know, and then you get to 20 and you go, do you know what? I've still got 6 miles, I can't do it. And you go 21, 22, 23. And then when it's all over, you can look back. But if you start worrying about the future, you're going to gas out. You're not going to make it.
Do you feel that anxiety sometimes in those big moments where you've got, you know, something's coming up and you just can't stop thinking about it? In my business, it was actually the first, you know, I heard this term mental health. And I think at the start, I thought, nah, it's not real. And then a couple of years in, a lot of people, I start hearing, you know, friends of mine and stuff going through really bad things. And I'm like, I think it's real. And then I got to this point where I was almost scared to admit that it would be real, because I almost felt like if I admitted it was real, then I'm like welcoming the possibility into myself of like labeling myself something. And then there was one moment where I had this really big decision to make in New York, and I'm laying in the hot tub in Manchester, and I just got really anxious. And I was anxious for about 4 days up until the point of the decision. And then I thought, that's probably the closest I've come to some kind of mental health predicament, is that real anxious feeling that I couldn't shake.
I think social media is horrendous as well. Like, I've made the decision in the last couple of years specifically, to start ignoring and blocking out a lot of...
You're a celebrity now.
Yeah.
It's a new thing, isn't it?
But when I was coming through... When I was overturning the system, the support was unreal, and I was really feeding off that. I mean, anyone that says, you know, they're not affected by criticism or they're not worried about, I mean, that's a load of rubbish. Of course you don't like people criticising you. And by the way, you love people patting you on the back and championing you. Of course, it's natural.
What things get to you, though?
Stuff that people, like the personal stuff, couldn't give a monkey's about. It's more about it's more about people, when you're putting the work in something and you're so passionate about something and you're actually working for the good of, might be the sport or whatever, it's the people that just, you know, see you completely differently. So that's the frustration. But over the last couple of years, I just started thinking to myself, I was having a conversation with my old man. My old man's on Twitter, right? And he phoned me up and he go, I was having an argument with this geezer on Twitter, right? And he was going on about the snooker and the format. And I said to him, I'm like, whoa. I said, are you serious? I said, who is this bloke? I said, do you imagine someone stopping you on the street and having a pop at you about the snooker format? But it's the platform that made us what we are. It got us to the top. You know, the interaction with the fans and the understanding of their mindset. So we can't just, you know, but it's become a toxic place. It really has, you know, and I worry for my kids. You know, sometimes one of them be on TikTok and she'll put a dance out and someone will come back and say, you know, I don't know, you're ugly. You look really, you're stupid, you know, and it's like, we never had that in our day. I mean, we never even had a phone. You know, if someone didn't like you, they might say something in the playground, but that's about it. So we live in a world of criticism, and I think it's a negativity. But that's what I said to my old man. I said, you imagine like these people, they're all doing it all day. I'll put a post out, and it's the same ones all the time. And I think, you know, and even to the point where someone posted my phone number on Twitter, right? And I've had my phone number for 25 years, same one, right? And someone posted it and went, this is Eddie Hearn's number, give him a call and, you know, tell him what you think about the pay-per-view price or whatever it is. And my phone was going mental. Like, it was like literally all day, it was just private number. And I thought, you know what? You got to change your number. And I thought, I can't be bothered. So I started answering a few, right? And to this day, this was a few years ago, people still do it. And there's this one guy.
You got the same number?
Yeah. I can't be bothered to change it, right? So this guy, private number. And it's all day, right? So I pick it up and I go, hello, mate. And he goes, oh, bloody hell, Eddie. And I go, yeah, how you doing, mate? And he goes, when you going to stop ripping us off on the pay-per-views or something like that, right? And I go, and I went to him, mate, let's have a serious conversation. What are you doing? And he goes, what do you mean? What am I? I said, have you got a job? And he's like, yeah. I said, you haven't, have you? And he's like, well, not at the moment. I said, what are you doing? I said, how many times have you phoned me today? I mean, the answer was like 40, right? I said, you got to focus. I said, all the energy you're putting into phoning me because you think it's banter or it's some kind of accomplishment if I pick up the phone. I said, put it into something worthwhile. I said, because you're really wasting your life. And he just went quiet and he's like, oh, come on, Eddie, what about a few quid off the pay-per-view? And I'm like, no, mate, I'm serious. But I want to help you. Know, you've got to change. You know, and then he just hung up. And I thought, shit, I hope he's all right. But
midlife crisis.
Like, but it's true, isn't it? What are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, all right, once might be quite funny, you know, I'll pick it up and you give me a bit. But like, all day, every day, you know, because I'd hate to be one of those people that just wakes up every morning with no fire in the belly, with no passion, with nothing. And there are, by the way, that's 95% of the population. Many people, that's why it's so important to me here to create an environment at Matchroom for the team where you enjoy being there. You know, we get food together, we got a gym, we got a pool, we're all travelling away to events, we'll have a night out, we'll do that, because you can't be in a job or a life where you're just flat. How am I going to get the best out of you if you don't love what you do? And it's very difficult to have that same passion when it's not your business, you know? So motivation is important, but
Frank said to me, he said, you know, Eddie's a businessman. That's where you came from. Your dad's a businessman too. And with this new age of social media and all the interviews you do on YouTube, and you are relentless with the interviews as well, by the way. Like, and when I saw you in New York on that rooftop with like the nice garden and stuff, yeah, you were back to back doing those interviews with all these bloggers for 3 hours. That's helped grow the business. It's why most people know Matchroom, especially of this generation. But it's made you a celebrity. And Frank said to me, he said, I don't think he's enjoying this celebrity thing, you know. And I think a lot of people would be really, really surprised to hear that, because, you know, they think that you'd love it. They think you love the attention. I mean, promoters are in the business of attention, right? But from a personal perspective, apparently you don't like it. You don't like the celebrity.
I didn't set out to be a celebrity, and I set out to be a businessman. I set out to continue the success that my dad built. But I do recognise that if I am well known, if I am a showman, if I am a celebrity, it will help me push my events. It will help me push the profile of fighters. You know, you get to a stage now where the industry haters might say, oh, well, it's ridiculous. He's doing all these interviews. You know, he's more popular than most of his fighters. You know, more popular is the wrong word, well known than some of his fighters. But that's me, you know, and I look at the success of the UFC. I look at the growth of that business and Dana White, and every major fight sport product has that lead guy. In WWE, it's Vince McMahon. You know, in MMA, it's Dana White. And in boxing, I guess it's me, or, you know, I want it to be me. So there's a method to the madness. But, you know, the book was something that I wanted to do because I just thought it was funny that I would ever write a book, right?
I don't think it's funny.
No, but if you knew me at school and you knew, it was more like, Hodder put it to me before lockdown. And when lockdown come, I panicked. And I was like, oh, and next, you know, talk about being at home with your kids. Now I'm at home with my kids and I've got no events. And, so I was just like, for those first 2 weeks, I was just, right, we launched a fitness show with Sky that people could do at home, Fighting Fit. You know, I said to the guys here, get me that book deal. I'll write it now. Let's do the book now. And I wrote it in lockdown, you know, and I was just Zooms, more interviews, because I was just scared of not having that drive every single day of, you know, going out there and I did enjoy it.
Sound like an illness, you know?
Well, it is an illness. It is an illness. Let's be honest, we're all sick, aren't we? I mean, like, you can't wake up in the night every night and start writing emails, doing contracts, texting people, right? And then wake up at 7 and do the school run and then drive to work and do it all over again every single day, unless you're a little bit ill in the head. Like,
you can't actually be still. Like, so when you talked earlier about that cigar moment in the future, sitting on that beach, I didn't believe you for a second.
Yeah, you're probably right. But I'd like to think that, it's at least what I'm telling the missus, that one day we'll chill out. You know what I mean? But
could you imagine laying on a beach with a cigar like this? No emails, no nothing, just no fights coming up, nothing, just
meditating. No, but I think it all depends where you get to. You know, it's like when you're building your stack at poker. You know, the problem with gambling is you never know when to walk away, right? And we're not gambling anymore because we're very good at what we do, but life is always a gamble. So when you build your stack, it's that moment when you say to the cashier, can I get a rack, please? And you put it in your rack.
Yeah.
And you go up to the cashier's desk and you say, cash that in for me. And they go,
so,
and you walk away and you go, yeah. And then you sit down, you go and have a nice beer.
But that moment sucks. You said that
that moment doesn't suck. But then after, again, it's the thrill, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like to win. I like to people. So the thing that would hurt me more is if I turn around tomorrow and went, I couldn't have done any more in boxing. I'm out. Bye. What would hurt me more is sitting on the beach, not you know, enjoying myself, going, now I'm gone. All those people that I was fighting again for all those years to become number one, they're back, you know, they're back. And that's what, my dad walked away from boxing because it is the most aggravating business, an intense business. And that's what I'm saying about it all throughout the night, because everyone's trying to fuck you non-stop, right? So you have to sleep with one eye open. And I think he got to a stage where he went, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go and do darts where everyone's going to love me. Do you know what I mean? And I'm jealous of him for that, because I saw growing up this guy that was so intense and who had a bad temper, and, you know, and then all of a sudden, once boxing went, he was just chilled out. Wow, I can't believe what's happened to my life. So, you know, I hate to let people win. And if I left, ultimately they would win. But I guess the only time you can walk away is when you're content. And will the contentment ever come? At the moment, like you say, possibly not. But who knows? You know, who knows where we can build to, where we can get to, where it might be that moment. And again, you have to always leave the option open, because, as I said, your thoughts at 20 are totally different to your thoughts at 30 and 40 and 50. I may get to 50 and we may be, you know, have had another great 10 years and I might go, fire's not there anymore. I'm done. Or I might be saying, right, now I want to take over music. Now I want to take over football. Now I want to, you know, so it's difficult to say.
And with the family businesses, they're a very special thing. And in the world we live in today, with these big global corporations and the public market's growing, it's very rare for a family business to withstand the temptation of acquisitions or going public or whatever. You don't have a son. right? And I'm wondering who continues the family business if you were to go down that route. Is it
No,
one
well,
of your
that's
daughters?
a good point, because that is the conversation, you know, ever since I started to understand business more, for me, that is a natural progression of a family business, to go family business, you know, investment or acquisition or IPO. And that's what you do, because how do you, I have aspirations for this business to grow globally and to be staging events in every major territory in the world. You know, to do that does require huge investment, does require, you know, management, and we can do it, but that's not our speciality. Our speciality is creating great live events for our broadcasters and fans. Okay. So my dad has always said to me, I will never, ever, ever take investment for the business, float the business, or sell the business. And I've always, over the years, gone, yeah, but, you know, we got to get to it. And actually, the son thing's quite interesting. You know, I've been blessed with two amazing daughters. Of course, every man would quite like a son. Didn't work out. That's what God gave me. But there is, it's an interesting point, because my end goal, if I had a son, and listen, I'm only 41, who knows?
Yes.
But I think it would be more, you know, here we go again, down the line kind of thing. With me, I would quite like to end the journey with my dad. Do you know what I mean? To say, look at what we, you know, not it's gone, but look at where we started, look at where we finished. Because it's very difficult. And I take the interest from, you know, hedge funds and, you know, investment funds with unbelievable amount of compliment to say, wow, you know, and the calls are coming in non-stop, because they appreciate the model of growth where, when we talk about one sport, one promoter, one belt, you know, that mindset, it's a carbon copy of the UFC. Now, the UFC sold for 4.6 billion. There is no reason why boxing, with so much more history, with so much more credibility with fans and broadcasters, can't replicate that model and actually be even more valuable than the UFC business. And I'm really the only chance it has to do it. It's not going to be Bob Arum. It's not going to be Don King. It's not going to be Frank Warren. It's going to be me. So all of a sudden I've been giving interviews like that, and then the calls are coming, well, right, we want, you know, and it's like, guys, we don't need it. We're not, if I wanted to go and get funding, if I wanted to go and float, I'd do it tomorrow. But it's a big, you know, headbutting system with me and my dad. And, you know, he's starting to look, and I'm just saying, we can't just be blind to it. It's a natural progression for any business in terms of growth to look at these models. And
But is that why you're doing the business? Because, you know, the happiness you've got from this business, I would guess, and I ran a public business until recently. Much of it has
aggravation.
Loads of bullshit you don't necessarily want, right? Quarterly reporting, you got to hit the numbers. If you don't, then you got to do something short term that's not necessarily in the long term interest of the business, right? So I'm almost quite jealous of the setup you have, the control you have. You have it in your family, and you're happy. But you're someone that almost needs forward momentum to continue to be
it's
happy.
just growth, isn't it? You know that as a family business, you know, we you know, you can see in our financial results, we're fantastic. You know, we're a huge family business in terms of the numbers that we're delivering year on year end.
Yeah, it's huge.
But at the same time, you're almost capped by the growth and by the numbers within that setup.
Yeah.
You know, okay. So when you start, you turn a break-even business into a 5 million EBITDA company, and then before you know it, the aim is 10 and 15, and now we're 30, and you know. But how do you get to 4 billion?
Why does 4 billion matter?
So that's just the UFC number,
yeah.
You know. So, but because why it matters is it was never on the agenda. It was never possible. It could never be done. And I guess it goes back to the competition with my dad, where I'm saying, you know, I believe, you know, when you talk about PE ratios and the value of a business, yeah, we know what we're worth now. But I do believe we have the potential to be worth those kind of numbers.
And that would be your success in some respects.
It's a game. It's a game, Steve. It's not, I don't know. It's not like, I don't I don't think that deeply I just see it as a game.
But when you start thinking deeply, it doesn't make you question. So yeah, that's a good point. Why does
I don't know. I live in the moment. I live in now. I just feel that every day we're trying to expand. We're trying to push the boundaries. We're trying to do more. So would I like this business to, sell or have a value of four? Fucking right.
Why?
Because it's ridiculous. We're just a couple of, like, he's out of Dagenham. I'm his son.
It would be a great story.
Yeah, but it's us against the world.
Because the money would do, to be honest, nothing.
The money wouldn't change my lifestyle at all. I've got a couple of nice cars, right? I've got a nice house. I don't want a yacht. I don't want a jet. We'll talk about it. But, I don't want for anything. I'm at the age now, maybe when I was in my 20s, get a private jet and a yacht. You just rent it if you need it. So it's just the fact that what we've done. I think legacy is. I was talking to Freddie Flintoff on my pod yesterday, and I said about legacy, and he went, "I think legacy is a load of bollocks." I disagree a little bit, because when you go back to that moment where you're on your deathbed, and it might be today, and when you've achieved something like that, you just start laughing, and you go, "I can't believe we've done it. I can't believe we've done it," and that would be the better kind of memories, or the achievement to me. Can you believe we done it? But you've got to enjoy it at the same time. But I don't know. It's you can debate this all day long, because you sit back on the deathbed and you say, yeah, but was I really happy? Well, of course, because this is bringing us happiness. I know that every day I come in here and I'm smiling and I'm up for it and I'm passionate and I'm full of energy and I've got a drive and a fire in my belly. That's good enough for me. My dad comes in here every day. He's been coming here, into this business for 45 years. And he's got the same passion, the same energy that he did when he first started the company. That's got to tell you something.
And this is almost somewhat of a contradiction, because he's coming in here every day. You're both really, really happy. You're coming in here with a fire in your belly. But then there's this other part of you that's like, but we need the end point.
Well, he doesn't. He doesn't want any of that. He's going, no, son, we've got the most amazing business. We're forecasted to just for continued growth for the next 5-10 years. We've got broadcast contracts locked in. We're untouchable. And I'm like, yeah, but how do we go? I want offices. We have offices in England, in New York, in Milan, in Madrid. I want offices in Sydney, in Toronto, in Mumbai, in Beijing. That's what I want.
Why?
Because we're not supposed to have it. We were never supposed to be this business. I was never supposed to be this kid.
So it sounds like you're proving something to someone.
Maybe, but probably to him. And if that's what it comes down to,
which comes back to your childhood,
probably.
And if you prove that to him, right? You have all these offices around the world. You sell for 5 billion. Will that make you happy?
Probably not. But I don't know. I don't think that selling for 5 billion and making a load of money will make me happy. But it will make me happy to be able to say, I can't believe we've done it. I can't believe what we've achieved.
And then you'll need the next thing.
Possibly. Or that might be the cigar on the beach moment.
I wrote this one sentence in my book where I started to understand the moment I described at the start, where someone made me an offer for my business. And I looked at it when I was 23 and I thought, oh my God, 25 million quid. I was like, oh, fucking. And then what I learned in that moment is my whole life became so confused, and I almost fell into I'd call it chaos. And so in my book, I write that we live our lives thinking that we're striving for stability, which would be completed goals, the cigar, thinking that stability is stability, and that we're trying to escape chaos. But what I came to learn was, in fact, our stability is chaos. It's the having unanswered goals, and it's the problems, and it's the forward motion. So our chaos is stability, and our stability, the cigar moment, would actually feel like chaos.
Yeah.
It would feel like some kind of...
If it wasn't time.
Yeah.
If it wasn't time. And we don't know when it will be time.
Yeah.
But what you just said there is very true, because like any athlete, that moment when they're in the chaos is where they feel most at peace with themselves. You speak to any fighter and you say, where would you rather be? Anywhere in the world. And they say, in the ring. And that's the same for us. So it's not like I want aggravation, but stick me in it, put me in front of problems and tell me I can't do something. That's where I'm in my moment. Am I in my moment where I'm sitting at home, watching TV. No, I'm at my best when I'm doing those 100, 200 interviews, or I've got problems, or a fight's fallen through and, all of a sudden the shit's hit the fan. That's when I'm at my best. So, and that's where I do feel calm in a way. At first, when you have problems, it might be a panic, but for me, okay, this is what we do. We go to work now, and that's the same for an athlete or a fighter. That's when they feel calm, when you might be watching going, oh, because that's not your calm. That's not your moment. It's their moment. I'm fine. When AJ fights, he ain't nervous. I'm fucking shitting myself because I can't control it. It's not me. It's not what I do, but that's what he does. When a fight's fallen through, or it looks like a massive show's about to be cancelled, and other people in here might be going, oh, do you think it'll be all right? Do you think we'll, and I just lock the door and say, right, leave me alone. And I go to work. That's no problem for me, but you only become exceptional at things and used to things when you become familiar with them. And when you put yourself in the same position time and time again. You talk about Frank, we always laugh about him giving his press conferences, because when I did my first ever press conference, which was Audley Harrison against David Hay, I couldn't stop shaking. You wouldn't have known it at the time, but I put my hands on the table like this, and I could feel him, I could see him going. So when I spoke, I just put them underneath my legs like this and just leant forward, and you would never have known. And when I done the next one, a little bit less, and the next one, and then within 5 or 6, I never needed notes. I just speak, for hours.
Speak. I couldn't believe it.
And with Frank, he done one recently, and I could see him shaking. I was just taking the piss out of him, and I just said, just keep doing it, repetition. Keep putting yourself in situations. Steve Davis, who is my godfather, I said to him once, how do you, when you talk about sort of sports where millimeters make a difference, it's nothing more than snooker, I said, how do you not get nervous? You go down to pot the black ball and just one little jolt and it's all over. And he said, I have no nerve endings. He said, because I've been put in the position time and time again. In the end, it's second nature. It's just like riding a bike. And that's what the same with business. You have to keep putting yourself in a position time and time again, and you'll keep improving.
Listen, thank you for your time today.
No problem. Enjoyed it.
I know you're
it's another counselling session.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave here now and go away and have to have a deep think. And I think the best thing you can talk about mindset and mentality and for hours and hours and hours. Just keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't overthink things. Be happy. Keep smiling. That's difficult when you want something so bad and you're chasing it, but if you start to really overanalyze, that's when, things start creeping in. Just keep it simple. And, I say sometimes if things get tough or, we've got problems, and I say to my old man, he said, don't worry. He said, just wake up an hour earlier tomorrow and go to bed an hour later. And I'm thinking that's so, and he is the most simple mindset, but it works for him because and the best thing you can do is be honest with yourself as well. Just try and understand, take a step back and just think about what is happening in the world and your world right now. And if you can understand it, you can deal with it and you can solve it. But just think simple.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean that everyone ends up with the same result. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to achieve the people who have ambition, who can go for it, are incentivized to do it and incentivized to build jobs and build companies.
And
that
what
will
about the
employ
ones
other
that just
people.
want to work hard and have a good family and take care of them and have a home and be able to turn the heating on and be able to have financial security?
They need to work for a business, don't they?
They need to work for you?
Yeah. Pardon?
They need to work
They
for you?
would need to work for a business, some business, right? If someone doesn't create that business, then where do they work for? We now have 11% of working age people are now declared too sick to work, right? We have a huge problem in the UK. We also have 25% of people who are working age don't work. It's 1 in 7 men don't work at all.
Do you think they're lazy, Dan?
I think the system is collapsing.
Do you think
the system is
the
changing.
average British American is not working, is lazy?
What I think is happening is that the technology companies are totally transforming and disrupting everything. And what happened is around the post-war era, we had good jobs. We had, you could work in a local thing. What's happening now is that jobs are going to the Philippines. They're going to, technology does three things. It makes jobs more simple, which makes them replaceable. It makes jobs global, where you can move them to anywhere else. And then ultimately it automates the job altogether and gets rid of it through code and software. And what's really going on in the last, especially 5 years since the pandemic, is technology has decimated the existing systems that we all relied upon when we grew up. And when I say the education system isn't really working, it's still pretending that there are office jobs available for people when they graduate. And it's still pretending that there's like 1950s scenarios available, when actually my kids are going to be disrupted by AI. Everyone's kids are going to be disrupted by AI. These sorts of things are the things that really we also need to be talking about.
To all the founders and small business owners listening, I think you need to hear this. It's an update from my sponsor, Fiverr. They've just launched something called Fiverr Go. And in short, it's a huge game changer for you and your team. It's a tool that's been created to help freelancers train and control a personalized AI tool specific to them and in their style, which means that Fiverr freelancers and their clients can now generate unique work almost instantly, purely by combining their own unique style of freelance talent with personalized AI technology. The big unlock for me here is time and getting more of it back. What might have taken me a few days or a week can now be done in seconds with Fiverr Go. You get what you want and you get it straight away. And if you need tweaks, the original talent is on hand for fine tuning. Fiverr Go is already available across 60 categories, and that number is growing rapidly. If it's something you'd like to tap into, head to fiverr.com/diary now and explore Fiverr Go. Use code DIARY for 10% off your first order. This is the moment where AI superpower meets human talent. I want to take it back to a point you were talking about earlier, which is about personal agency, because I would like you, Daniel, to give the counter to your own argument, because I want to make sure when we're talking about solutions to this problem, start a business, be entrepreneurial, you can also understand how that works for people with our brains and our mindset and whatever we had that made us do that, our risk appetite, our trauma, whatever it might be. But not everybody is wired in such a way. So that's not necessarily the best solution for everyone. And also we sit here with a bit of hindsight bias where we were lucky and it worked out for us. But when you look at the stats around businesses succeeding, the stats, it's like 90% of businesses fail.
Yeah.
So most of them are failing. The ones that emerge from that, people like me, then we have a bias where we go, well, it worked for us, so you can do it too. I don't come from money, so I have the same bias. I watched.
Well, I've built from scratch several times because I got disrupted several times. So I've had to start with nothing several times and build.
But you started.
But I'm a certain type of person, right?
And when we say start from nothing, you actually started with a wealth of information, and the whole game in building a business, intellectual capital, having been through it before, being around that mentor that gave you the information.
Also having access to a great market, like having access to a free market, is a big thing. I was born in Australia and I moved to London at the peak of London's economic freedom.
So this can't be broadly applicable advice, can it?
Well, I think personal agency is broadly applicable.
Yes, I agree.
I got this friend of mine who woke up one day, he went out clubbing, went out to a nightclub, felt sick, collapsed, woke up and they'd chopped off all 4 limbs, right? So he had quadruple amputee. He was 19 years old. So he wakes up in bed and he basically says, I'm a quadruple amputee. I was fine 48 hours ago and now I'm a quadruple amputee. And he decides to make this decision in the hospital room that this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to him. And he makes that decision. Right?
Even that is a consequence of him and his wiring. What I'm trying to understand is...
But he ended up starting a clinic, and it's a multi-million-dollar clinic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible
and he's
what
the
people
exception,
can do.
Not the rule.
It's incredible what people do. But you only need a few people to succeed and the whole economy starts to improve. We actually, in this UK... we only, at the peak of our entrepreneurial, blitzing it, where we're doing so well, there was only 40,000 scale-ups. 40,000 companies were creating jobs growth, higher wages, investment into the country. It's only 1% of people who pay 30% of the taxes and 10% of people who pay 60% of the taxes. So you only need 1 in 100 to actually create something that's valuable, and you get an extra 30% of taxes.
But so that again is, we need this one. That's advice for the people that end up getting into that 1%.
Yeah. But who does everyone else work for? Like, all jobs growth comes from entrepreneurs.
So what are you saying to the 99% there? Are you saying go get a job?
Well, you need wealth creators in the economy who are building something. Like, you take Gymshark. People who work at Gymshark, they're super glad that this guy started the company. They're really happy that there's a company. Otherwise, where would they go? What would they work? Where would they work? So if Ben decides that he doesn't want to start that company in the UK, or if he gets to 10 million and stops, then all of those additional jobs are toast. They're all gone.
So are you encouraging the entrepreneurial? You're not encouraging everyone to become an entrepreneur. No, you're saying those that have that bias or that.
I'm saying we need a system that encourages the people who can to do.
And what about everybody else?
Well, the flow-on effect is that creates jobs, creates wealth in the economy, and free markets lift everybody up. Free markets just means that everyone's trading with everyone. It starts to, like, the whole thing. I mean, it's just a tale as old as time. As soon as economies are free and there are entrepreneurs starting things and growing things, everyone's life improves. Everyone's life gets better.
And what part of that do you disagree with, Gary?
I think it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The only period, listen, the last 70 years are not normal, Stephen. The last 70 years are not normal. The last 70 years in Europe and the US, where ordinary people like my dad could work for the post office on less than average wage and buy a house and support family, it's not normal. It's not normal in the world, and it's not normal in history. Most countries in the world are not like that. Most countries have a small super rich elite and a very large group of extremely poor people. That's most of the country, and it's most of history in this country, and it's most of history in the US. We talk about Charles Dickens. I read Hard Times, and this is written in the 19th century when Britain was like the industrial superpower of the whole world. And at the time, the government was talking about, should we tax these industrialists? And the industrialists were saying, if you tax us, we'll throw our factories into the sea. And it just reminds me, the only time we've ever really been able to provide decent living conditions for ordinary working people was the period after the war where we massively redistributed wealth. And now we're losing that holding of wealth of the middle class.
Can you acknowledge, though, that was a completely different time as it relates to being able to...
It was a different time, but, I could,
because of technology.
Nigeria today, Brazil today, the UK 300 years ago, France 200 years ago. There is only one specific time that we have ever successfully provided broad living standards for ordinary people, and it was a period of time where we protected a broadly equal wealth distribution and taxed the rich at very high rates.
And you can acknowledge that that's extremely hard to do because the nature of the economy
100%,
is now different.
100%. That's the reason why all of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents lived in poverty. And that's why I know I'm probably going to lose. And that's why I bet on the economy getting worse. And that's why I know poverty is going to increase, because it was extremely difficult to get that unusually fair share for ordinary working people. And I know we're losing the argument. And I know that Farage will win, and I know that Trump will win, and I know that things will get worse. I don't think I'm going to win.
So if you know you're promoting a strategy that is not going to work, and it sounds like you think is incredibly, almost impossible, then why would you not be more practical in your solution?
Stephen, if it was impossible, I wouldn't be here.
So you think it's possible?
Of course it's possible. Of course it's possible.
But you believe you're not going to win?
I'm a betting man, Steve. I'm a betting man. I put my bets on. I am. If I get okay. So my YouTube channel is growing really, really quickly, and I'm obviously like starting a bit of a movement, and there's a lot of political support. And if it keeps growing, we'll get more political support. At the end of the day, I'm trying to tax the richest and most powerful people in the world, and most of these people will come out and attack me, and they'll try and stop me. And I do not have billions of pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds to use to support my YouTube channel. I'm counting on ordinary people like your viewers to support and share my message. Now, listen. For most of history, that has not worked. And for most of history, ordinary families live in poverty. I don't think it's impossible that we, ordinary people, can win and get a fairer share, but I think it's worth fighting for, Steve, so I fight for it anyway.
He's right that for most of history, you've had the super elite and then everyone else is down here, and it's massive wealth inequality is almost the normal for the last 5,000 years. And almost everywhere, you've got kings, queens, dukes, and peasants and serfs down there. There have been economic situations that have been different. Dubai is a really strange situation. It's a desert. It's inhospitable to live in. It's the last place in the world most people would think or choose that they would want to be, and yet it's one of the most economically rich places in the world right now. they actually didn't start with oil wealth. They were able to borrow money to build Dubai, but the low tax environment has now attracted some of the world's most talented people to go and build technology companies there. And I don't know, have you been there recently?
I've been to Dubai, a few years ago now, but I've been there.
At the moment, it is the most thriving entrepreneurial community on earth outside of the US, but probably even rivaling the US, that there are investors, there's entrepreneurs, and the wealth is going through the roof. I've got two friends who are personal trainers, fitness trainers. One fitness trainer has decided to stop working more hours because he's hit 50 grand a year and he now gets taxed at 40%. So he's basically decided he's going to earn right up to 50,000 and then stop working. And then the other fitness trainer went to Dubai, launched an online fitness community, and has just bought a $350,000 Ferrari. And one entrepreneur is super pumped and super excited about building a business because he's not overtaxed. The other entrepreneur has literally said, I'm not willing to do this because of how much I have to pay.
Just want to be clear, I've always campaigned for lower taxes on working people. Always. So,
But here's the thing, right? If I was to ask you, you've just become one of the best-selling authors in the country. If your publisher came to you and said, because you're in the top 1% of our authors, we're going to halve your royalties if you sign a second book with us, you wouldn't sign a second book with them. You would go to another publisher who says, we'll pay you more royalties because you're so successful.
I would have written this book for free, Dan. I would have written this book for free. In fact, the first time I got offered a deal, I said, don't pay me in advance.
Then give your royalties away.
Why?
Well, because what I'm saying.
All right, fine. I'll give my royalties away.
No, but I'll
shut my YouTube channel down.
No, but
I'll stop working.
I'm saying we respond to incentives. That if your publisher, if Penguin came to you and said, book number 2, you get half royalties because you're in the top 1%, would you sign with Penguin
Dan,
or would you go with someone else?
I walked away from a £2 million job a year to run a YouTube channel. Do you think I do the work that I do for money?
I'm not talking about that you do it for money. I'm just saying if you had the option to sign between 2 publishing contracts, right, and all things being equal, one's going to penalize you for being in the top 1% and the other one's going to reward you for being in the top 1%. Would you of course you would go with the normal, like if all things being equal, you want to write a second book anyway. It's the same for entrepreneurs. When entrepreneurs start companies, we can either start them in high tax economies or with a stroke of a pen, start them in low tax economies.
I think the rich world is going to have to start rethinking the fact that it allows people to, very, very wealthy people, to own enormous amounts of their physical wealth, go live overseas and not pay tax. I think that has to be revisited for sure. Because what you're saying is, I want the benefit of being able to sell to the US market and the UK market, but I don't want the obligation of having to pay US and UK taxes. And you are correct that at the moment, the US and UK governments allow that. And I think that's phenomenally
US
stupid.
taxes you on worldwide income.
Well, only a small amount, right? So I think that realistically, I think that the US and UK governments have to stop that. But the way I see it, the US and UK governments and increasingly a lot of global governments are kind of being brought up by the elites. And, you know, we have Elon Musk is basically the president, right? And we had Rishi Sunak, whose father-in-law was one of the richest men in the world. Like, if you're Rishi Sunak, who, for our American viewers, was our prime minister until very recently, his father-in-law was one of the richest men in the world. He's got £700 million personal wealth. He's going to be making 30, 40 million pounds passive income. And you're getting paid 130 grand a year to be prime minister. When you're making policy, do you think, maybe I'll ask my father-in-law at once?
Yeah.
You know, the fact is, what you're seeing here is if you allow the rich, I'm never ever against entrepreneurship. Yeah. I'm not against people getting rich. If you allow the rich to get richer and richer and richer, they squeeze the middle class and they squeeze the poor class out of things like housing, of things like space in cities, of things like energy, and of things like owning, sharing government and owning, sharing the media.
Do you acknowledge that countries that adopt a anti-rich, big government approach tend to collapse?
What, like this country in the 60s?
Well,
like
we
needed
a US bailout. We needed an IMF bailout in 1976.
But the US did the same thing. The US had even higher taxes than us.
We basically, like, you take all the countries where the government becomes big, they meddle with your life, they're involved in every decision, right? Half the economy. I mean, here's one of the things.
This period is known as the golden age of capitalism. It's the period of time when
Which period? This period
the 50 years after the Second World War.
Oh, it's the golden age of middle class, to be middle class.
You don't care about the middle class?
No, of course I do. But the 70 years after the World War II, where the government sold off all of its houses to middle class people, so we got housing wealth, but you can only do that trick once, right? So you can only sell off all the houses to everyone once, which is why all the baby boomers own them.
Well, the living standards collapsed after the houses were sold. There was a long period where the houses weren't sold. Between the Second World War and the 80s, the houses weren't being sold.
When do you pinpoint living standards collapsing?
Well, I think there's a few, obviously, big moments. I think 2008 is a big moment. I think COVID is a big moment. I think it's the 80s where you start to see the wealth distribution go. What matters is actually the distribution itself. Yeah. So once you change the tax system, it takes a bit of time for the wealth distribution to change. But once you start, for me, the big thing is the loss of wealth holding. I want ordinary families to be able to hold wealth. So and once you lose that, you lose the middle class. And you will not find me a single country in the world now or the history of the world that has provided good broad living standards without allowing ordinary families to own assets.
Yeah, I agree. And take Singapore, for example, where everyone's encouraged to own properties. They've got an amazing system in Singapore. They've taken
a massive government, by the way, enormous government.
25% of GDP.
But they own all that. They own the houses.
They have a wealth fund.
They own all the houses.
No, they don't own all the houses. They have a sovereign wealth fund that circulates houses through. They
own the houses.
They've solved
Singapore
property.
owns the house. The Singapore government owns an enormous share of the housing stock. So do you think we should own the housing stock?
Pension funds. People, they not force their citizens, but they direct their citizens into home ownership.
So you don't think the Singaporean government owns a large share of the housing stock?
I just know the Singaporean government's only 25% of the economy.
But a big share of the housing stock.
So 75% of the economy is
I would like to say, by the way, just to be really clear, I've never, ever once advocated for big government. Never a single time.
But
never
more
a single
taxes
time.
is bigger government.
I want higher taxes on the wealth holders so we can tax wealth creators and working people less.
I
don't want a bigger government. I want our viewers to have more money. Yeah, I want our viewers to have more money. And also, I want to tax those super rich so that they stop squeezing ordinary families out of asset ownership.
It seems like an obvious solution. It seems like...
it's a good solution.
It seems like, hey... Who's got the money? Rich people.
Not the money, the assets.
Right?
The assets.
Who's got the assets? Rich people. Then let's just take them off them. And
no. I don't want to redistribute. I am the only person on this table anti-redistribution because the redistribution is happening in front of our eyes. The middle class is losing its assets. Government is losing its assets. Those assets are being accumulated by the rich. I want to stop the redistribution, please. Please, I am the most anti-redistribution person in this game. We need to stop the redistribution of wealth away from ordinary British and American families.
So the difference is, for me, it's very simple, which is I really truly believe that free markets and low governments and less taxes creates more wealth in the middle.
Dan, freedom for the heron is death for the fishes. If we have complete freedom, multimillionaires like you and me will get richer and richer and richer every year, and we will squeeze out and we will eat the middle class.
Can I ask you, though, if wealth inequality could be solved, but everyone does worse, is that a good solution?
Obviously not. The whole reason I do this is because I don't want ordinary people to collapse into poverty. This is about people being able to feed their kids.
So wealth inequality is not the problem. It's collapsing living standards.
That's quite contorted. It's quite contorted logic. The problem is collapsing living standards. I am somebody who has made millions of pounds by understanding the simple fact that living standards are falling because of growing wealth inequality.
So living standards, if they were to increase, but there were super rich, is that a problem?
I think you do need to be worried about extremely wealthy elites. Yeah, I think what's interesting, you look at the founding of the United States. These guys, the founding of the United States conceptually is really based on these ideas of distribution of power. That's why you have the president and the House and the Senate and you have this independent judiciary. They're like, we cannot allow power to become concentrated because they came from a Europe which had extremely concentrated power and extremely wealthy elites and extremely broad poverty. So I think that allowing a small group of society to increasingly monopolize power and wealth over time is obviously something we should be worried about. But primarily, the reason that I worry about wealth inequality is because I see and I bet on and I make money on the fact that it causes living standards to fall.
By the way, I actually really agree with you. And the founding fathers of the US, they did, especially around the 1900s, they did want to break up monopolies. And breaking up monopolies was one of the big things that they did trust busting, where they broke up Standard Oil and all of those sorts of things. One thing I do really see happening at the moment is that we have a stupid, outdated definition of monopolies where we use monopolies the same way they used it when they had the oil companies that owned all the oil. In the technology world, a monopoly is formed through an ecosystem. So Amazon, for example, owning AWS and Audible and this and this and this and Whole Foods, it creates a fortress that's almost impossible to compete with. And Google owning YouTube and Gmail and all of this, they create these fortresses through ecosystems. One of the things that I do think we need to look at is compulsory breakup of big tech once you hit a certain time, because it's very difficult. Because, do you know, billionaires have two big fears, right? Keep them up at night, having nightmares. Number two is high taxes. Number one is that startup entrepreneur who disrupts their business, and they want to kill that early. You know, Steve Jobs at 24 years old disrupted IBM, and Jeff Bezos disrupted Walmart. So they are terrified of entrepreneurs in the middle. And they want to create government regulations to say, hey, you know what? Let's cap entrepreneurs at 10 million. You can get to 10 million. It's okay for us. We're way past that point. But Gary's our guy because he's going to cap everyone at 10 million.
I never said cap anyone at 10 million, by the way.
Well, because what do you think will happen? People stop. As soon as you have wealth taxes, people just give up. They just don't want to do it. So
you're telling me our viewers, if they knew they could build a 20, 30 million pound company.
It sounds ridiculous.
But they knew they would have to pay 20. If you're worth 30 million, 1% above is 200 grand a year. So if I said, if you can have a 30 million pound company.
Traders stop.
Just bear in mind, right? You make 5% a year on your wealth, right? So if you've got a £300 million company, you're going to be making £15 million a year. And I'm turning to you and I'm going to say, you know, you've got to pay 200 grand a year on your £50 million revenue. And they're going to say, you know what? I'm not going to start a business. I don't want to be worth 30 million quid. This is, you know, this is ridiculous. You know, nobody is going to say, oh my God, I don't want to be a multi-millionaire because in 20 years' time, I'll have to pay 1% taxes.
But most traders... Yeah. Most traders are earning what most people earn in a lifetime, traders can earn in a year. Yeah. Most traders don't stop.
No,
right?
Yeah. Talk about that a lot in my book.
Right?
Yeah.
So most traders just keep going. Entrepreneurs are the same, that they're motivated to keep going. But when you have wealth advisors and investors saying, do not build a company in the UK because they're anti-wealth.
Listen, I'm not trying to make the UK anti-wealth. I'm not trying to make the UK anti-wealth. I think the UK and the US need to be looking at a situation where you cannot allow people who own enormous businesses that sell to your country to live in Dubai, to live in the Cayman Islands and not pay tax. And I don't think that's a controversial position.
I've got a question for both of you, which is if you are a young person and you're 18 years old now and that you're listening to this, but your objective really is an individualistic one. You want to get rich and you have a great future for you and your family, like all of us have been able to do. What would your advice be to them, Gary, at this moment in time?
This is such a hard question. I know Dan's angry at me for what I put in my video, How to Get Rich. Somebody came around to my house and asked me this the other day. Obviously, I get asked it a lot because, stupidly, I'm very public about the fact that I'm rich. What I did is not replicable. It's not. I'm sorry, but it's not. People always say, why don't you teach me to trade? Like, it's hard. It's hard trading and it's dangerous. And I think a lot of young men are getting sort of sold into trading and becoming gambling addicts. You know, work hard. And I wouldn't even say don't become an entrepreneur. I've never ever said these things. Work hard. You know, if you think that you have an opportunity in tech entrepreneurship, go for it. Understand it's risky. I think that sometimes this message, just become an entrepreneur and you'll make it, is a bit dangerous because I think most people who try to become entrepreneurs fail. And I think it's super, super dangerous. The reality is, and you know, maybe Dan won't like this, maybe you won't like this. I think it is very, very difficult for a young man or a young woman from a poor family to become rich. And I think it's increasingly hard even to just get those basics of financial security. So listen, obviously reduce your spending if you can. Don't buy into this like Balenciaga bullshit. Stay away from that. But work hard, study hard, try to get a good job. But also understand, we are shrinking the seats on the lifeboat. That's what we're doing. We used to allow 50% to be secure. Then it's 40%, then it's 30%, then it's 20%. You know, you've got family in Nigeria. If a young person from like Shantytown in Nigeria came to you and said, Stephen, what could I do to get rich? You would have to say to them realistically, listen, you are in a difficult situation here. You need to work really, really hard. But if you are able to make enough money to support a family, be proud of yourself.
What I would actually say to them, so yeah, I have got family in Nigeria. For people that don't know, I'm by blood half Nigerian. I would say to them that knowledge is really your life raft. So obviously there's a big tech boom happening in Nigeria, which is liberating a lot of people from that situation. So I would try and tell them to get on the life raft that is like knowledge of this new revolution. So from Nigeria, you can learn to code. And then the great thing now is that we literally have, actually, this is quite interesting. We're building a tech company in San Francisco called Flightcast. It's live. Everyone can go look at it, flightcast.com. And the lead developer, and Guess Radar, the lead developer of Guess Radar is a Nigerian guy.
But how many of those jobs in the Nigerian tech sector are going to kids that grew up in the shanty towns?
I have no idea.
Because I worked in, people ask me, tell me how to do what you did, all right? I worked in Canary Wharf. It's in East London. I could see the building from my house growing up. There was not a single other kid from East London the whole time I was there.
Do you know, to Dan's point about this remote work revolution, where like work now you can work from anywhere. And in our company, Third Web, San Francisco, some of the staff that we now have are in the Philippines because they just have like great creatives there. It's obviously more cost effective. Isn't this a huge part of what's going on in our economy? This digitalization and this remotification of work.
It is. But I think for many people, you know, I'm sure you pay your workers in the Philippines very, very well. Most of these people, they used to have a half decent wage in an office, and now they're locked in their bedrooms, barely paying the bills.
Yeah.
In the Philippines?
Not in the Philippines. The Philippine guys are balling out of control.
No, I'm saying the Philippines is booming at the moment.
Yeah.
Like
So you think the average person in the Philippines is living a luxurious life?
what's happening at the moment?
Do you think the average
Not
person in the Philippines is living a luxurious life?
There is this thing called remote foreign workers, and this is a huge boom. And the economic
So
boom.
the kids should move to the Philippines then. It's great. You get a great quality of life in the Philippines.
A
You
lot
know,
of
when I
people-
looked at the slums of Manila, they should just get jobs. I don't know why they're not getting their laptops out.
The
poverty in the Philippines is horrific. Listen, Philippines is a
It is,
beautiful
yeah.
country, an amazing country. I love the Philippines.
but
I've been a
money's
number of
flowing
times.
in there at a rate that's
But
never
what
been.
is the life like for your average Filipino?
Well, would you agree though that their economy is just getting flooded with money at the moment? Like money's flowing in there.
Money is flowing in, but it is not giving a good quality of life for your average Filipino.
That's not true. Remote foreign workers.
Well, we can
Remote foreign
we can
workers
ask our
can-
Filipino viewers to tell us what's
remote
life's
foreign
like for
workers
the average.
can actually often support their
We can
entire
have a look.
family.
I don't know what the average wage is in the Philippines.
Just to bring it back to this point, though, so I wanted to know from Gary. He said, work hard. If you're a young guy listening to this now, I was reading this really interesting article yesterday from I think it was from a major newspaper talking about the Lost Boys. And it goes to show that I think it's 1 in 7 young men that is at a working age now are out of work. So there's lots of talk around young men in particular and how they're struggling. You'd say work hard, Gary. You'd
Work
say
hard, no Balenciaga. But the big
No
thing
Balenciaga.
is recognize the situation that you're in. And I would encourage them to support my work and follow my channel because the lifeboats are shrinking. And trust me, we're going to get our kids in the lifeboats. And we all know that, all right? And if those lifeboats are shrinking, if you don't stop the ship from going down, it is not you and me who are going to go down. We'll be fine. If you don't fight the political fight, I guarantee you, people like Daniel will.
so. You're saying that they should also get involved in the political fight.
You have to. That's what our grandparents did.
And
That's what our grandparents
if they
did.
want to become millionaires like you and me and Dan.
Oh, it sounds like Dan's got better advice for that than I do.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask Dan as well, but I'm wondering how your advice ties into sort of like the young person who's trying to liberate themselves from where you came from or where I came from.
You know what? I don't think I'm the guy to say that, man, because, you know, I had this unusual gift from a young age. I was very, very, very good at maths, and I just followed that. And, my sister, she's a poet, and she wrote a really successful grime and musical about Dizzy Rascal's first album, all right? She comes from obviously the same family as me, poor family. She worked so hard. She worked so hard. 2 degrees. She can barely pay the rent, all right? So I don't want to turn around to our young kids and say, well, I've got this talent, follow your talent. Because it doesn't work, Stephen.
True.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Wait, my sister does great work. But
Yeah.
financially, for young people, following your passion, following your talent, unless you come from a rich family, realistically, very, very rarely works. And I know it worked for the 3 of us at this table, but let's not pretend that everyone experiences the same things that we experienced.
What would you say to that, Dan, and what's your answer?
I think there's 2 economies going on at the moment. There's a dying economy, which is the Industrial Revolution economy. And that is all the office jobs and the factory jobs and all of that sort of stuff, which is very much being automated away and moved to globally. And at the same time, there's this new bubbling up digital economy, which I'd call the entrepreneur economy or the digital economy. Both of these economies are kind of coexisting. One's going like that, one's going like that. And if you want to be economically successful, you need to stand next to the biggest piles of money that you can. Unfortunately, being a poet doesn't pay a lot of money, and we all know that. That's not a surprise. If you came from a very rich family and you were a poet, you'd probably be one of the 60% who fell out of a rich family as well. If you want to be economically successful, you need to say, what is the thing that's economically booming right now? Gary saw the finance industry at that particular time, but if we actually look at the finance industry now, it's in decline, and trading is being replaced by AI robots. People who worked in your career are going to be replaced by IT systems that basically do similar jobs. It's going to be, these things happen. We're going through a massive technological change. But at the same time, it's never been easier to learn skills for free on YouTube. It's never been easier to join communities where you can get mentoring and get support. There are communities of angel investors who do invest in startups. It's never been cheaper or easier to start a company. There's never been more software and technology to scale and grow. In a short space of time, I would say do what Gary's done. Gary publishes online. He's built a personal brand. He's attached it to a recurring revenue model. He's got.
Yeah, I also worked for free for 4 years. So I'm not sure how replicable that is.
So build a personal brand, attach it to a business model that is where money's flowing. These are positive things you can do. We all have to play the cards we're dealt. You can always find someone who's done better with better cards, or someone who's been dealt better cards, and you can always find someone who's been dealt worse cards. No matter who you are on the planet, there's someone better, there's someone worse. You have to play the cards that you're dealt. You cannot sit around waiting for the economic system of the world to be changed. You have to say, you know what? These are the cards I was born at this particular time, in these circumstances. These are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. I'm going to play the cards that I've dealt. Personal agency is what gets people to feel good about their life, to make progress. And as soon as you play the victim mindset, as soon as you say, oh, you know what, the answer to all my prayers is Gary's going to change the system, you're in serious trouble.
Can I just say one thing back on that? If we become a society of individuals who think only individually and never consider broader societal problems, we will become a society that becomes unable to fix societal problems. I'm somebody who has made millions of pounds betting on the collapse of society, the collapse of the middle class. I don't want to be giving stock tips on the Titanic, okay? I understand that we live in individualized societies and it's not popular to say, hey, you need to protect your society. If you don't protect your society is going to collapse. And the British public, the American public, have a choice to make here.
What would that
I'm here
look
to
like?
protect these viewers.
What do you want people to do?
I want them to get involved with, watch my channel, subscribe to my channel.
What's your content?
On YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Share it with your friends. Share it with your mum.
Okay, but then what?
And then push for change. Push for change like our grandparents did.
But
push the politicians to tax working people less and tax extremely wealthy wealth holders more.
So vote for the Greens.
Vote for whoever gives you that, whoever gives you your share of the pie. So basically, listen, this is not football, okay? I'm not here, Gary Stevenson, member of the Green Party.
But ultimately,
I'm here to protect the working class.
So that's their that would be their social and sort of political energy would be to stand up and fight. But in their personal lives, are you telling them to start businesses, take big risks, work really hard, go for it because they can also make it?
I would defer to you guys on that. I'm not a businessman. I'm an economist. That's what I am. I made my money by being an economist. I'm a very, very good economist. My predictions will be right. People can go and watch my predictions. At the beginning of COVID, I predicted the entire COVID crisis exactly correctly in May 2020. This is, I'm good at this. And listen, I'm never going to come here and say I'm a better businessman than you. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not. I'm a very, very, very good economist. This will happen.
Is there something that I can do if I'm sat here listening at home? I understand everything you said. I believe everything you said. I believe that it's going to get worse for me. Yeah. Do you think I should still take responsibility of my situation and fight to make my life richer, better, more successful?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Because you know, and I'm sure you know, if you're average British or American, if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to turn the heating on. You have to do it. You have to do it. And I've never once, I think my opinions are often mischaracterized as being anti-ambition. You've read my book. Do you think I'm anti-ambition?
No.
I work my tits off to make money, and I want every single young person in this country to be able to make money if they want to, if that's what they want to work towards. But we've created a society where it's almost impossible for young... Listen, I've been there. I've been at LSE. I've been at Oxford. I've been in the city. I've been in the media. I've been in politics. All of the guys at the top are a bunch of rich idiots. We are not allowing these smart kids from ordinary backgrounds